This episode is brought to you by the Financial Technology Report, a leading information source on financial technology companies and solutions. Today, we speak with Max Goldman, co-founder and CEO of Carefull, an AI-powered financial safety platform helping families protect aging loved ones from fraud, scams, and money mistakes. Max is a seasoned product leader with a track record in building and scaling B2B2C platforms across fintech, SaaS, and consumer tech. He focuses on solving real-world problems through design, data, and cross-functional collaboration. Since 2020, Carefull has grown quickly to a B2B2C model that helps financial institutions protect older adults and build trust across generations. A new partnership with the Alzheimer's Association strengthens its focus on financial caregiving. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the executive chairman of Market Insight Media and the managing partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Great Entrepreneurs, a podcast for driven entrepreneurs and business owners. Our podcast covers all topics related to the entrepreneurial journey, from ideation to execution to optimization and to reaping the rewards of a well-run business. In the minutes ahead, we'll share with you unique insights and tactics from some of today's most accomplished and inspiring entrepreneurs.
Max, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
My pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Really interested to talk about financial technology and where your company, Carefull, sits within the overall landscape. It's interesting that your market is really targeting a segment that may not be tech savvy. And so all the more your solution is needed. Maybe let's kick off there and tell us about Carefull.
Yeah. So the problem, right, just writ large, right, is that there's many tens of billions of dollars of scams and fraud targeted at Americans every year, especially older Americans. And that's only growing, right, as the technology gets more sophisticated and scammers get more sophisticated. And there are more vulnerable folks than ever as sort of a percentage of the population. And this is true in the United States and it's true outside the United States. And so Carefull really exists to sort of help better protect regular folks and especially older folks from the fraud and scams that are now coming at them basically every day in their text messages and their checks that are getting washed in their bank accounts and in every other way.
You know, in concept, the solution, the idea makes sense. And you have a deep background in tech as well as being an entrepreneur and an executive.
Yeah.
Where do you start? Like when you began the company, how did you envision what that solution would be for practical purposes?
So the way Carefull got started, was sort of second half of 2019, and I'm sort of coming off several years at Google. And a good friend of mine, who's now my co-founder and co-CEO, Todd Rovak, has spent, the last bunch of years of his life sort of working with larger financial institutions to come up with new products and figure out how to better serve their customers. And out of that work came sort of an insight that older folks in particular are very, very underserved. And sort of the germ of the idea that there might be the opportunity to create a platform to support older folks and their families as they kind of move through sort of that last piece of their journey. And as the sort of scrappy tech guy, he sort of brought that initial sort of opportunity to me. And I sort of started to dig into it quite a bit, including, I was looking back at my notes the other day. I think I did something like 100 user interviews, before they were users, 100 interviews with families who had older folks, usually parents in their world, and really thinking about the problems that most deeply affected them. And out of that came two things. One was the insight that keeping watch over everything that's happening was one of the biggest problems that they faced. And then knowing what to look for while keeping watch was sort of the second biggest thing. And for me, it was sort of very personal. A member of my family was at the beginnings of a decline. And so it became very personal, right? How can I help solve this problem, not just for Americans, but for me personally? And that's always a good place to start when you're building a thing, because the empathy is easy to build. So that was the sort of genesis of Carefull. And we got started right before COVID in 2020. So we've been at it for 5+ years.
And so one would think that the apps that are on our phone and that enable digital banking, whether it's Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase or PNC, one of the big banks, that they would have it under control in terms of safety for any of their users? And I'm assuming most of the boomers are using these traditional banking apps. How does Carefull come into play there, or does it come into play?
So, look, the financial institutions are doing their very, very best to protect folks. And we partner with them to help increase the level of protection that's available to their members. And the truth is, the landscape is just changing so fast that there are new threats all the time. And the ways that are available to, regular folks to protect themselves are changing all the time. And so Carefull's mission is bring financial care into financial services. So make it part of something that every institution can provide, and to be the best at helping protect folks from the constantly changing landscape. And so, it gets to sort of what the product is, but really, at a high level, it's sort of an all-in-one, what we call financial safety platform that includes all the things we think are important for folks to have on their side. And our job is to continually make that better and more protective and create additional safety for folks.
So does it work in the background, or is there an actual interface for the consumer?
Yeah, importantly, there's an interface. And actually, this is one of the ways that we're different from a lot of the other solutions that are sort of around this. Nobody does quite what we do, but the solutions that are in the market tend either not to. They exist sort of in a full stack somewhere that a bank is running and they're running on the data, or they're, something that looks like sort of antivirus or that kind of thing. And so what I think one of the things that's unique about Carefull is we have a purpose-built experience that's designed for families and for older folks that makes accessing these protections really easy to use, even inviting, and dare I say, truly informative and helpful. And that's one of the innovations that we've been able to kind of push forward and continually get better at is how do you make these things, which are kind of very esoteric and often kind of hard to understand, how do you make them real? How do you encourage people to engage with them? And then how do you deliver value over time? And, we're good at that, and we continue to get good at that, get better at that. And that's part of the reason we, folks partner with us, is because that's our expertise, and we can help confer that expertise on the institutions that we work with.
And so what stage is the company at currently, and, maybe a hint towards level of adoption of your target market?
Yeah, I appreciate that. As a sort of startup, we don't disclose kind of specific numbers, but we now work with many dozens of institutions of sizes from, Synovus down to smaller institutions like the Cooperative Bank in New England. We work with credit unions like Merck Credit Union. We work with wealth management firms like Mass Mutual and Cetera. So our footprint is growing quite rapidly and across those sort of three primary segments: banks, credit unions, and wealth management firms.
I understand. And so is it fair to describe the approach as B2B to C?
Absolutely, that's the case. I think we've found that that's the most effective way to bring a product like this to market because, if you were to say you had, as we do, the most secure systems that anyone can build, if you took that directly to an end consumer and said, trust us, that's a much harder road to hoe. On the flip side, you partner with someone that they already trust, and now they're much more open to the protections that you offer. And so it's useful from the perspective of conferring trust on Carefull. It's also has the benefit of conferring trust back on the institution as we add lots of value for those end users, and they're able to kind of derive the benefits of leveraging the platform.
And it seems like you need to have some expertise within financial regulations as well as cybersecurity. Is that a fair assessment about your engineering talent?
Yeah, I mean, the regulatory hurdles are not significant in the way that we work because we are incredibly sensitive to, right, the industry term is PII, to private information, and we hold very little of it, actually, in order to do our job. So we're, of course, very sensitive to regulations, very focused on security, but the regulatory environment is not a huge impact to us, except for what's changing in the landscape is that banks and credit unions and wealth management firms are increasingly subject to the oversight that the government provides, is increasingly expecting that they will do more to help protect their customers from fraud and scams. And so a lot of the growth in the business is driven by those folks looking to find ways to better support their end users, whether they be customers or members or clients on the wealth side. So, a lot of the expertise of the company is obviously in security, obviously in AI and machine learning. It might be worth stepping back 1 second, right? So what the hell is the thing? So Carefull is, as I say, a financial safety platform, the core of which is kind of a big brain that considers the transactions across folks' accounts, considers their credit and credit monitoring, considers their identity as it exists online, and many other signals. And it sort of creates kind of a model of what good or normal looks like for a particular person or household, and then monitors for all different kinds of anomalies. I think now 60 plus unique opportunities to detect anomalies that could indicate scams or fraud or mistakes or misunderstandings or misappropriation, kind of all the different ways things can go wrong. And the idea is that it's a proactive protection that finds little things before they become big problems that can have sort of catastrophic consequences. Mm-hmm. And so when you ask about expertise, the expertise is in all the ability to understand that data, to interpret that data, to find patterns in that data and leverage tools that understand the patterns in that data. And that's really the kind of unique capability of Carefull. I don't think we have another sort of direct competitor on the market for the sort of that core of what we do. And then in addition to that, we package into this platform all the other things we think people need. So $1 million of identity theft insurance and home title monitoring. And we just released a thing called Scam Check, right, which helps folks take a weird text message or a weird email that they got and understand right away if it is likely a scam that they have to avoid. We include things like trusted contacts so that especially older folks can pull in family members to understand what's happening. So it's really intended to be a sort of a all-in-one sort of financial safety app built around this kind of big brain that can understand all these different data signals and find little things that could be indicative of problems that are coming up, and all different kinds of problems. So problems like we can identify using our data if someone is sort of on the path to dementia because financial patterns are known to change in those circumstances up to like 6 years before you can understand it in the doctor's office, right? And so we can take all of those deep understanding of what's happening with the household, we call them members, and use it to help flag things that could be problematic and then support them once we've identified those things. So go back to your initial question, the expertise is in sort of the deep understanding of those data patterns. And then the expertise is in supporting folks. We have real human beings that exist only to support folks in working through the various kinds of issues that we find. And so the combination of those two things together is really Carefull's unique standing, unique position.
And that's a much needed service. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine in that Citi group. You know, I've been using their credit card for a couple of decades now. And there was a time where when you were traveling, the system would think that there was fraud. I was in Europe or whatever, and it was super frustrating. Like, oh, you're about to pay in a restaurant. It's like, oh, you've been blocked. And then you have to like go through the hoops to unblock it. Super frustrating. Then they caught on that, oh, no, I do travel, but it's not consistent, right? Or in terms of the travel. So the brain that you developed has to be able to know like what truly is an anomaly.
Yes, that's correct. And we're getting better at it all the time. It's an iterative thing, right? The sort of examples you cite were sort of early dumb days of some of this stuff. It's like, okay, we're not in geo X means, you know, throw an alert or block a charge. Now I think the world has gotten more sophisticated, but we try to look at the fulsome picture of a member's kind of financial life because we understand, do they travel? Like, so is outside of the geo, is that unusual, right? And so it's really looking behaviorally. And again, sort of one of the areas where we're different. We're not just sort of like looking at one transaction and saying, is there something weird about this transaction? We're looking sort of across their financial life and understanding, how does this fit into what we understand that they do? Are we seeing changes in the behavior that might indicate there's a certain kind of problem? Are we seeing something that's particularly out of band for them? You know, one of the things that we're able to see, for example, is like, you know, people as they get older sometimes start to reduce their range of travel around their home because they feel less safe or they don't want to drive as far. And so all these little things add up to signals that help us kind of understand what's going on with a person and what else we might look for to kind of help protect them. So it's come a long way from the days of you're not in New York anymore or wherever you might be. And now really what we're looking at, I think uniquely, is sort of the range of behaviors around a particular person with the single purpose of helping sort of protect them from kind of getting into trouble.
Would the end user know that Carefull is working in the background?
Always. So In every case, the member activates Carefull for themselves. They choose which accounts to connect to it. They choose which protections they want to activate. So in every case, this is a member-driven process. The FI makes Carefull available, or the wealth management firm makes Carefull available to their customers, their clients, but the member has to choose to activate these protections and which ones they want to activate and to what degree they want to activate it. Do they want to connect all their accounts or just their most active ones? How do they want to think about it? So in the end, it's totally in control of the member.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned not having direct competitors. I imagine some financial institutions develop this in-house, like what I was referring to with Citi years ago. And so is that the competition potentially?
Yeah, I mean, some of the larger institutions especially have some of these elements running in the back of their services. I wouldn't say that, that they don't. It goes back to the point we were talking about earlier about the experience. A person has to choose sort of, we call it a second set of eyes. You have to sort of be in a place where you think it is valuable to have a system kind of looking at what's going on and trying to help you flag things. And what is the experience of that? How do you encourage people to do that? When you find something, how do you get them to pay attention, right? We're all inundated with stuff all the time. So it's not just the sort of core technology itself, again, which I think is very unique to us, but also how it's delivered. And we're especially proud of the fact that when we send an alert, it's opened at extraordinary rates, higher than just about any interaction you've ever seen in any digital product ever, because they know that when we send them something, it's valuable. It's not going to be noise. It's personal to them. It has specific value. And so they engage with both setting it up and getting it ready for setting up the service for themselves in their own bespoke way. And when we find something that we feel like they need to pay attention to, they do it at extraordinary rates. And so it's that combination of the underlying technology and the ability to get folks to pay attention, which we've honed over the years, that I think is kind of especially unique and differentiated, even if there are elements of it in the products that large banks have. How do you get a customer to care? How do you get a customer to pay attention? How do you get a customer to sort of understand the content and the substance of what you're sharing? And I think that is some of the secret sauce we've learned over time that we're particularly good at.
Would love to touch a little bit on your background before we head into the final two questions, but you have a very interesting background. You've done a variety of things in the tech field. So yeah, it would be great to share it with the audience.
Yeah. I came of age at the time that the internet was newish. And so for me, it was the coolest thing that had ever happened. And so I always thought it would be amazing if I could make a career building these companies. And I've been lucky enough to do that. The first one, I think I built a company that sold water coolers online in the early 2000s, like just sort of figuring out what the thing was about. And before Carefull, I started a company called Director that in the end helped small businesses create video for YouTube and for socials, high quality video using the HD cameras that were now in our phones to create video for social and for YouTube. And we were kind of lucky enough to exit that business to Google. And so I spent a few years there. But Carefull, I think, is the fifth startup that I've done. I've been fortunate enough to make a career doing it. I have so much fun every day. Building these companies is an absolute blast. And in this particular case, the opportunity to really help human beings. Video was fun, but when we do our job at Carefull, we help real humans with real problems every day. I was just looking before we got on the call, right? We caught a $21,000 check washing scam yesterday where someone had written a $900 check to Easter seals. Someone caught it somewhere, changed it to $20,900 and deposited it. And we caught it and the bank didn't catch it, right? We saw one earlier in the week where it was a phishing scam that sort of was slowly escalating and turning into, thousands and thousands of dollars that the member was sending to this scammer. But we caught it early. We helped them understand what was going on and we kept it from escalating further, right? And so to see those stories is so gratifying because the scammers are sophisticated. And so how do we help protect the folks who really need it? It's such an enjoyable and meaningful part of Carefull that honestly I haven't had at some of the other ones in the past.
Last two questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Early in my career, I worked at an enterprise software company. And I was an early employee. The company was growing quickly. And we had a lot of these values. One of the values was no a-holes. And the irony of that was that the guy who ran the place was the biggest example of that you could imagine. So to answer your question, I had a boss at the time, this guy, Rob Bernstein. And he and I would sit together and try to figure out, can you build a big, meaningful company without being one of those people? Can you do it from a place of integrity? Can you do it from a place of care? And Rob went on to be the CEO of a company called Coupa when it was, he joined when it was 4 people in a little office, and he grew it to thousands of employees and took it public and then later sold it to a private equity firm. And so I always think about Rob because he was able to, and still talk to him all the time, because he was able to sort of build a company from a place of integrity, build a company from a place of care, build a company from a place of love even, and do something great. So, you don't have to be a jerk to build something meaningful. And those are lessons I've very much taken to heart as, a through line of Carefull in a lot of different ways. So he's been an important input into my career.
Awesome. Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'm going to use it selfishly, which is that Carefull recently, this week, I think, or the end of last week, we announced our partnership with the Alzheimer's Association. And obviously a leading charity, a leading nonprofit in the drive to ultimately find a cure for it. But in the interim, we had talked about dementia, our ability to kind of understand what's happening there and help protect people and families as they find themselves on that particular journey. And so we have joined forces with them to help educate folks about it, to improve our product around some of the understanding that they have developed and that we have developed over time. And so we're very, very excited about that and looking forward to what we'll be able to do together.
Excellent. Well, Max, I want to thank you again for taking the time. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.